welcome to Tuesday Sewing. So I've got out my, excuse me, all the pages that I made for Roxy's Journal of Stitchery. Now I've been looking back, crikey, they're up to number 9, volume 9 now, starting January. I'm not going to start it because I want to try and get done what I've already got. Now, looking back, this is either 2 or 3. Now, I don't think I did the first one, and then I think they did a Christmas one, so which would make this number 3, I think. But anyway, if you go into all the details down below, if you go into Roxy's Journal of Stitchery, either on Roxy Creations or Roxy Creations by Sarah, you'll have loads of videos on there. And they also have Roxy's Journal of Stitchery on Facebook. So I'm way behind then, aren't I? If this is 2 or 3 and they're up to 9. And my garden path then, I don't know. Probably 4 or 4. I don't know. So I've already made a start off camera. I showed you the backing. There's just enough. The first one I sewed all the way round with blanket stitch, and then realised it's a waste of time doing the top because that's all going to be sewn together to make the booklet. So I have already sewn 3 of those and got the backing on it. So I'm really pleased. There's just been enough to back all these pages. So I have to go through this level of thickness to make it easier on your hands. Anything to make it easy on your hands. I'm sewing it anyway with tapestry wool because I want that thick look to it, to the edges. And I'm using my bookbinding needle, one of my bookbinding needles, because it's got a massive eye and it's very substantial. You'll find that when you're pushing through several layers, it does hurt your hands and it's really hard to do. And sometimes you end up having to pull it through with pliers or whatever. So I found for me the easiest way around that is to use a massive needle. I mean, you wouldn't use this in delicate things because you don't want massive holes leaving behind, but it works really well for the thickness of the tapestry wool. And we're going through 2 very thick layers here. So I thought what we'd do as well is we'd do a stitch a week, a different embroidery stitch, even if I'm not stitching it to the projects that I'm finishing. Once we get onto the round the garden path, yeah, we can incorporate a lot more stitches into the plants and flowers we're going to be adding further on there. But this I'm just finishing off, so we may as well start, aren't we, with blanket stitch. Now, I am not trained in embroidery, and the purists will not put knots in. I just hide mine behind. And so, oh, sorry, I knocked you. So basically, I am going to just start this off by doing an overlap stitch there, and then I can then continue with my blanket. So this pin's in the way, move it over there. So basically go through the fabric, make sure that you're going underneath where you're going to. Now, the other thing I've found really hard, and I suppose I've learnt then that if I'm wanting to stitch round the edge, don't use glue right up until, you know, I've used a lot of glue on this. I'm going to push that down because it's going through glue, because some of the pieces are glued on. I don't know why I did that, but anyway, I did. And so it's extremely difficult to get through glued pieces. So some of this I'm having to, and also I don't want to snag my needle up, do I? I'm having to work very carefully. I can't get through all the layers. So can you see that you've got your blanket stitch there? It was used for just as it says, blanket stitch for edging. So if things were, blankets were starting to fray, or pillow covers, things like that, then they would do blanket stitch. Now can you see I wouldn't be able to get through that if I hadn't got this big thick sturdy needle. In actual fact, it can be really quite a pretty stitch, depending on what yarns, what fibres you're using. Now that's really stiff. That's why I've got this felt mat. You can just push it. The only thing with that, you have to make sure that you've got it. You've still got your loop at the top. So I don't want that to be in the way. And so I'll go through there and over the top. Make sure that that thread is underneath so that it makes your edging. You can do it the other way. So if you wanted, actually, if you weren't edging anything, you just wanted it for decoration, you can do it the other way. So you've got the line going across the middle of your piece. But no, I'm doing it really for binding these pieces together, making it look a bit neater, which traditionally is what it's for. But I have used it in, if you're doing, I'm more of a textile experimental sewer. I'm not a pure embroiderer. I'd rather do things a bit more quirky, or use the stitches in a an unusual way. So if I'm working a piece and I want it to be unusual, I would sort of put blanket stitch all across the page going in different directions, rather than using it as an edging strip. Edging stitch, should I say. Yeah. So we're just slowly working our way. It's sewing our two pieces together, and then it's giving it a bit of a neater edge. Now, if people were doing it for an exam or whatever, because people do it as a degree course, embroidery and that sort of thing, they would, that's fairly even, but the stitches really, when they're doing that sort of course, have got to be really neat and measured and equal looking. Sometimes I would make the tail, so the tail stitch. Sometimes you could make these at different lengths. I'm doing it fairly even because I don't want it to encroach on the main piece here. But if you were wanting it to look different, you could have really long tails on it, short tails. You could alter that up as well as the spacing in between. Right, that's got some thick card there. So if you're doing it and pushing it through, just check that, you're looping through your top before you pull it through. Again, that's going to be, I don't know how we're going to do. I'm hoping we could do this blanket stitch for all our pages together, but I'm not sure we'll have to have a play with that. I'm not sure if that's going to work or whether I perhaps need to glue gun it. Right, that's not going to catch. So just keep an eye on the fact that your two pieces, that your stitch is going to catch both pieces, what you're sewing together. Because I've done that before, merrily sewing away and not sewn the back on. So just keep a bit of a check on that. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, because I've got this dangling at the bottom, I'm just going to do ordinary straight stitch to hold these pieces together. Yeah, because otherwise it's going to crash into the lace, isn't it? There we go. So hope you are doing well. Are you catching up with any sewing projects? I mean, I know not everybody that comes to my channel, a lot are here for the junk journaling, but I know quite a few of you would do both. And I love to be able to incorporate sewing into my projects. I've had to ease off, as you can gather, because of my arthritis. And I stopped sewing altogether, which made me feel sad because I do love sewing, but I can tell. I've got my stiffener on, my protector here, because I don't want it setting off as bad as it was when I had to finish doing crafting altogether. But I can tell I wouldn't be able to do it for long periods of time like I used to be able to do. And I suppose I could do a lot more on my machine. So I have done courses in machine embroidery. And that isn't as hard, is it, on the hands? But I do like to do my handmade things. I just have to be careful I don't overdo it. Right, that I'm going to end here, because we're then going back into our stitch, our stitch. See, you don't come here to learn the proper stuff.
The technicalities.
Yes. Blanket stitch. Right, I haven't got much of this. I'm going to have to go and see if I can find another skein of this brown. If not, I'll end up doing it in a different colour on my last page. I'm hoping this will be enough just to get along that end. Hopefully. Let's just move that up. I'm just checking that nice and straight. Okay. So I'm hiding my knot in here. So that just keeps it neat. So, what can we chat about? I don't think, again, I don't know if you're the same as us, but it's a bit of a hibernation month, I always think, January. Because, you know, you're getting over Christmas. I think if you've had a busy Christmas, I think you're glad to have a peace and quiet month. We have a lot quieter Christmases nowadays. But it's one of those months we start getting, you know, the weather. It's very unpredictable here in the UK, January. You know, you can have lovely sunshine one minute, snow the next. It's weird. Certainly we don't get the winters that we used to have. I remember when I was a little girl, the winters were exceptionally cold. We had a lot of snow and we had feet, you know, several feet of snow and snow drifts that you know, you had to walk everywhere because you couldn't, nothing could get through buses or anything. And I don't think we, in parts, I suppose, and I think Scotland tend to get more wild weather, but we don't do too bad for it. But the other thing is, it's one of them months where there isn't a load left in the freezer or in the pantry. It's one of those. I like to use up bits and bobs that I've had there all year, in my freezer all year, so that, you know, we can start afresh. But the other thing is that you end up, I don't know if you're the same, but we end up with all sorts of thrown together dinners with, you know, all sorts of bits of leftovers and such like. Because, you know, the other thing is that if people have spent a lot over Christmas, you're being a bit careful with your pennies. So, you know, it's surprising what meals you can make out of leftover bits and bobs. Right, that's not going to work to the end. So I'm just going to sew this off. Into a bit of a knot there. And I'm going to have to stop here because I've run out of wool. I'm going to have to go and find some. It's one of those days today where I have to keep stopping and starting. Okay, then I have got some. It's not quite the same, but it's not far off, is it, for the sake of this? It's near enough. This is slipping about all over the place. I used to do a lot of sewn covers. Right, this is going to be a bit tough. Let me just make sure that corner's right. Let's clip that. Okay. This I'm going to have to press through because it's, oh, crikey, thick. The other thing to do is, if you are stuck, wiggle your needle in a circular motion. That also helps free. But can you imagine how hard that'd be if we hadn't got this big bookbinding needle? I use it a lot, actually, if I'm doing, say I want to do a seed stitch on a piece of work, and I'm using this tapestry wool. Again, I will use this needle because it just makes life easier. And sometimes if you're finding a struggle with your needlework, it's because you haven't got the right needle for the stitch you're doing. At one time I never used to bother. Any old needle worked, but it doesn't actually. If you know, if you do any length of any amount of stitching, it's worth you investing in some a nice collection of needles, which I think I got a lot from Sue Spargo. There we go. Okay, that's that one done. Lovely. So that's that one. This is the back. So we don't need that yet. Now, let's see. And this has got a nice line down there, this seed sack. So I want to try and incorporate that so we could see it down the side here in places, because it's a nice decorative element, really. Put that there. Get another couple of binder clips. I find these more useful than using pins for things like this. Right, okay. So that is the top, and this, right, we'll work our way down there then. So this is the last one, and then we'll try and see if we can sew them all together. And I think that will be enough, because I can tell my shoulder's hurting. Too many years nursing, lifting patients. They brought a thing out called the Australian lift, and oh, we thought it was marvellous at the time. It was easier. We used to you do a leg and a wing. We used to lift people up a leg and a wing and touch them up that way. A leg and a wing. Well, you know what I mean. An arm and a leg. We're not lifting poultry. Oh, but when this Australian lift came out, oh, we thought it was absolutely amazing. I mean, they don't even lift anybody nowadays, any description. It's hoisting or tough, you can stay where you are. And so the Australian lift, we used to, so patients we used to put our arm, and mainly my right side, because I could lift better that side for some reason, and put arm, and then they'd lay their arm and shoulder across our neck and shoulder, and we'd lift them up like that. And we thought it were marvellous compared to what we had been used to. It was so much easier, but oh goodness me, it's been banned now, you know. And don't I know it, you know, my neck and my shoulders are shot. Now, you're not coming on here to hear all about my ailments. I don't often talk about them. But, you know, just out of a matter of interest, if there's any nurses out there that's my age, you know, just retiring, the Australian lift was a godsend at the time, because we didn't have hoists. We didn't have any aids whatsoever. They've got, you know, slide sheets and slip mats and all sorts now, you know. No. Even, I mean, nowadays, you walk down to theatre more often than not. You'd walk down and you just come back on a trolley. Well, no, we didn't do that. We used to have to, I mean, it was really ridiculous if you think about it. We used to have to, so we used to put what they call a theatre pack on the bed, which was like a blanket, but then underneath was a green canvas roll, and that had got two channels, one down either side, so you could put the theatre poles through. I mean, have you heard anything so ridiculous, really? And the porters had come, and the porters had come along, and these wooden poles, they were wooden, these theatre poles, and they'd slip one of these theatre poles up down the side of the channel, and you'd have to lift. The porter had hold two pieces, you know, one end, and then us as nurses at the other. And we used to have to lift patients then across onto the theatre trolley. I mean, fancy having to do that if they were only coming in to have an ingrowing toenail done. They were perfectly capable of shifting themselves, but no, that's just that's just how it. I think that's why I always hated surgery, and that's how it was. And no wonder it killed us. And I always remember this, like a bit of a funny story that we sort of tell locally. We used to have one of the porters, a little oldish chap, used to be like Andy Capp. I don't know if any of you remember Andy Capp, the cartoon thing that used to be in the papers. And he used to come, didn't have uniform or anything, but he used to come in this here flat cap. Oh, and it was a lazy piece of work. And he was, I suppose, really, he was probably getting to the point where he shouldn't have been working, but, you know, and he'd come and you think, oh no, it's so-and-so, I can't even remember his name. It's not like I'm telling tales on anybody, and nobody would know who we were. And he'd come and you'd put these blinking poles in, and generally speaking, you know, the big burly porters would take the worst of the weight. Oh no, he used to come and he used to go, you take the head, nurse, I'll take the feet. And I used to dread him coming because, you know, you've got all hard work to do, because he just used to pick, look at this, I'm telling you a story, and now I'm not even sewing my bits together. So he'd come and you're there, so you'd have to do a swap round. And oh my goodness me, did you blinking well? And no wonder I'm dropping to bits. I used to think, oh, it's about time they got rid of him. You know, and it used to be the same if anybody passed away. It was a similar setup with these poles. And I used to think, oh no, you know who it is, don't you? You know who it is on today. It used to, but you did it. You know, it's part of your job. It was part of being a nurse back in the day. And there was none of this, you know, and I got to be a very senior nurse. But there were none of this, oh no, I'm a nurse. I'm a qualified senior person. I'm not getting a bedpan, or I'm not, and which is what, you know, seems to be happening. Not everybody's the same. I'm not saying they are. But, oh, I'm a nurse. That's not my job. I thought they'd die if they knew what we had to do. And it wasn't right, because, you know, how many now are my age that are suffering because of all the heavy lifting and stuff we did. But, oh, and he used to, and it was just, I don't know, this poor chap, he just used to give us hours of enjoyment out of funny things, you know, like when you train, you know, like when you're learning a new job and you're a bit giggly about things, aren't you? You know, when you're 18-year-old and you've got Andy Capp coming, and he also used to be his job to come and shave the patients, do a shave ready for, David's shaking his head at me. He used to come and shave patients ready for surgery because, you know, gentlemen, if they had prostate done or whatever, I'm going to go along the bottom again there. Or ladies, you know, gynae surgery and the like. Although, yeah, I can't understand, that wasn't good really, was it? You know, that he used to even shave the ladies. Just shows you how we've come on, you know. But if it was his turn, oh dear. I'm struggling with this. It's got too much glue in it. I won't go any further. Davy's looking at me as if to say, I don't think they want to hear this any further, this tale.
If you do, leave a comment down below.
What, if you do?
If you do want to know more about it, leave a comment down below.
No, you don't want to know when he'd finished shaving. I think David knows the answer. I'm sure I must have told.
You've told me.
A million times. Yeah.
That many. Yeah.
More hospital tales.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't think they can have as much fun nowadays as we did. You know, we used to have kitchens. They don't have kitchens and such like on wards now. Not proper, you know, because a lot of the food is comes in and in a big, like these microwave trolley things. We used to have to cook sometimes if patients, you know, probably the nutrition was a lot better. You didn't hear of these cases of patients starving to death in hospital. Because if they weren't eating very well, you'd go and make them beans on toast or whatever. There was facilities. I mean, really, you know, we're training nurses and you were there in kitchen faffing about doing beans on toast. All part and part of the service. The lower, you know, the lower you were down in your training, the more of these funny jobs you had to do. But very happy memories of things like that. You know, you could. The patient care, I think, was really, really good. But I mean, we love, you know, we were on nights. If we were on nights and it was Christmas, I remember, and this is in coronary care, and they got a kitchen just same. But patients were well looked after, but we cooked an old chicken in that oven one Christmas Eve. Because I could smell something nice. Is there something cooking? I can smell something nice. Jacket potatoes in, chicken. Yeah. I shall continue the tales of a 60-odd-year-old nurse. I loved it. I loved it. It was hard, and yeah, I'm suffering for it now, but I did love it. Right, let's see now. Got to be a bit careful here because it's a bit stretched to capacity. I need to concentrate now instead of telling you. Well, I thought you might just be a bit bored watching me do this. Not Tales of the Unexpected. It's Carry On Nurse. For those of you outside of the UK, did you used to watch the Carry On films? Let me know. Because Carry On Nurse, all-time favourite, Carry On Nurse. And yes, it went a bit over the top with some of the stuff, but do you know that's just how hospitals were? I started my training, well, 1976 to 78, I did pre-nursing, so half at college, half in the hospitals, and then started my proper nurse training at 18. And I think we'd improved slightly than the Carry On Nurse by then. But my mum was a nurse, and very much Carry On Nurse in the 50s was very much as my mum remembered it. Don't know what I've done there. Seem to have got a cross stitch where I didn't want one. There we go, it's tangled. That's it. There was something very nostalgic about that time, nurse training. I lived in, so as soon as I was 18, I went to live in, and we had such wonderful times. Hard work though, hard work, and sisters and matron. Oh, crikey. They were, talk about Scary Mary, most of them. You'd be leaving every week because she hated it. Because they used to shout your name at top of the voice down ward if you'd done anything wrong, crikey. They won't stand for it nowadays, would they? That's it. That's it. We've caught it. So, yeah, let us know if any, you know, like, I know we've got the National Health Service. And so I suppose carry-on nurses very much like 50s and 60s and 70s in the National Health Service. Be interesting to know what it was like doing the nurse training then in, say, in the States. I should write a book, shouldn't I? I should write a book because the endless funny things, and, you know, it's got quite serious, but you were very professional. There was one thing that I think I was proud of, was that we always acted really professional in front of patients. I mean, goodness me, you couldn't have long hair, you couldn't have tattoos, you couldn't be overweight. I mean, yeah, it's gone, that was really a bit over the top. They didn't even like you to get married. I mean, we used to have in our nurses' home, we used to have a warden that lived in. She was like a guard dog on that door. She could sniff out. She couldn't sniff if you were bringing a man in at 50 paces. Let me tell you. Right. Okay. So we've come to the end of this bit. I'm just going to put another one in there because it's not quite caught it. There we go. Right. So quickly, let's see how it's going to look. And I think we might have to do the sewing or whatever next time. Let's try and put our pages. So that one. It may well be that I can't sew this or this together. I might have to do hot glue because I'm not convinced that I can get all the way through this lot. Ouch, ouch, that hurt. That hurt. Right. And then that will come over there and all the pages, and see it, look how nice it looks with that down the side. Yeah. So I'm going to leave it there now because my shoulders are killing me and I don't want to do any more that's going to set it off. So next week, we'll see how we can, if we can, I might have to like go through a couple of layers and just keep threading it through individually, you know, like as if we were threading. Now that's the thought. The other thing I could do, let me quickly find my, sorry, you can hear me sliding my drawers. I was trying to find those big rings I had. I can't just put my hand on them. That's another thing I could do, is we could punch a hole in, and then instead of having this coming over, we could have them all on those big rings. That might be an easier option, actually. Right, we'll have a look at that next week then and see how we end up, because then this one will be finished and we can go then on to something else. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for coming along and having a bit of a natter about everything not stitching. And next week we'll do a different stitch. Even if it's at the end, we do it on some, you know, some plain fabric, just so we can practice a new stitch every week. Okay then, so thank you so much for joining me. Take care out there. Bye for now.